Welcome to the Stone Carving and Lettering Takeaway podcast. I'm Charlotte Howarth and I'm a letter carver.
And I'm Nina Bilby. I'm a stone carver.
And we have a brilliant interview this week with a carver called Miriam Johnson, whose career is absolutely fascinating and exciting to watch. And after talking to her, we were both left with a great sense of looking forward, seeing what she does next, because we think it will be brilliant.
She's joyful. She's joyful to listen to, and the work is joyful, and we hope you enjoy this fascinating woman.
Listen and enjoy. Miriam Johnson.
Miriam Johnson, welcome to the Stone Cutter and Carvers and Lettering podcast. We've been doing it 2 years and I still don't actually know the title of the podcast, but thank you so much.
Anyway, welcome, Miriam.
Yes, thank you for interrupting
your names. We don't know.
Who are you? Who are we? What are we doing? Miriam, can you tell us where you are?
So right now I am in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. I'm en route to AlUla, town in Saudi Arabia, where I teach with the King's Foundation School of Traditional Art, and I teach stone carving.
Amazing. Thank you from us and all the listeners for taking time out of your journey. You're on a bit of a layover, are you, before you get to your change planes?
Yeah, but I decided to give myself an extra night, so instead of having like a short layover day. And I'm going to go visit. There's a Islamic art biennale, which is meant to be really good. So go.
That's worth going if you're there while it's on the go.
Yeah, exactly.
Do it. Miriam, we've known each other for a while. When did we first meet? Do you remember?
I'm trying to think. I must have graduated 5 years ago, I guess.
Is it only 5 years ago? It doesn't feel longer than that, doesn't it?
I guess I met you 8 years ago. Yeah. But I graduated just before COVID, so there's a weird time.
Yeah, time changed, didn't it? So you went to City and Guilds. So we met each other at City and Guilds, where you were on the then 3-year carving diploma, weren't we? But your career in stone started well before then, didn't it? Give us a short career update. How did it all begin?
So I started. So when I was 17, I decided I wanted to do some kind of building trade. It was quite out of the blue, but up until then, I wanted to do work in kind of care, like nursing or something like that. So it was quite a big change.
It's a big change, yeah.
I saw some people building a wall. Thought, yeah,
I could do that.
Yeah,
that looks good.
Well, actually, I think what it was also is that I realised that I wanted to do something physically, something that at the end of the day I could feel I'd done something physically with my body. I'd feel it in my body, but also that I physically see something in front of me. And then so I was 17 and I went and did a holiday camp in France, which was doing some restoration work for 3 weeks, and I loved it. So then I looked around and I found a course that is what was then the Prince's Foundation, now the King's Foundation ran, which is similar to, they still run a course similar to it, which is the Building Crafts or Arts program. And at the time they did this course with 16 to 18-year-olds starting out in heritage construction. So I went and did that course. So that was when I was just turned 18, and it was a course that had a summer school where you tried out lots of different heritage crafts involved in kind of helping design building, and then you went on placements with different heritage companies. I chose all stone masonry companies. I was able to go to a few places around the UK. Yeah, so a pretty amazing way to start. And once I'd done that year-long program, I then got an apprenticeship with one of the companies I'd done my placement with in Bristol, where I'm from. So I went to Bath College 2 days a week and worked 3 days a week for at the time a fairly smallish stonemasonry company, which was pretty great because it was really varied work. So I kind of got a really great, got to do a bit of everything basically. And I did that for a year or so, and then I went to City and Guild, and I remember really trying to work out whether I should stay and do another year at Bath College, because in a way I didn't do my full year. Um, but because I'd done a year before, it felt like the right time. But it was really difficult trying to working out, yeah, the timings. I knew I wanted to go to City and Guilds, but whether to do more stonemasonry. But I think I'm quite happy with the balance I got, and I did do quite a lot of. I felt like I've got a really good stonemasonry background and carving, so the balance feels really great.
So how old were you when you graduated from City and Guilds? So you're like 23 or something? Younger?
Yeah, 23. I think that sounds right. Yeah. I think I started when I was 20. Yeah. So at the time, I think one of the younger ones. I think now maybe it's changing a bit. There's more younger.
Yeah. I think it is very unusual to recruit in any course, the King's course and City and Guilds, to recruit somebody who feels like this is the career for them so young. I still think that's quite unusual. I think it's always been quite unusual actually, but
I feel so lucky whenever I'm having, just small talk conversations about what you do and when you started it. And, a lot of the time people are not sure what they want to, they never know what they want to do and things. I always feel just so lucky to have found something that I'm still, just works for me.
It was funny, we talked to Tom War a few episodes ago, and he said pretty much the same thing. He walked past some guys building a wall.
Yeah.
They were restoring a building on the outside, and he was just started to chat to them, and they showed him what he was doing. And he always had the seed of that in his mind, that's what he wanted to do.
Yeah. And I think
environment.
It was also one of those where for some reason, I'd never considered it. I think at one point, and also I think someone did say, I said something about building work looking really satisfying to someone who was, I can't remember what he did, but he trade, and he said, "Oh, why don't you do it?" I just never considered it. I don't know if that's partly because it's not such an obvious thing, I guess, as a woman. But having said that, around me, I've always had quite good. I mean, my mum previously had worked in kind of farming and has done bits of walling and has done things previously. Not like I didn't have any kind of role models really. Somehow, even with that, it's still just not an obvious path to take.
Were you an artistic child? Do you think that you were a maker as a kid, and then that side of it has been helpful a bit later on, or were you just interested in music and going out and drinking?
Can be interested in both.
You can be interested in both, but I'm interested in Miriam's. Yeah.
My family are quite artistic. Just growing up with me and my brother and sister, we were always drawing, making things. We didn't have a telly growing up, and I don't know. I feel like maybe that so helped. Just we had nothing else to do.
That's an unusual thing as well. That's very unusual.
But actually, I always felt like my brother and sister were both more artistic than me. That's just how I felt. I'm the youngest, and they were both really, really great. My sister's really good at drawing. My brother's amazing at making things. So I think I always felt like they're the artists and I'm not. So it always felt really strange that then I've ended up. At the beginning, also when I started, they were both doing very academic work, and I was suddenly the arty one. Although my sister's now doing illustration as well, so it's gone in circle. But it always felt like it was their thing and not my thing. But even I guess I very much started with the stonemasonry side, so not the what felt like the artistic side. And I think I needed time to accept that I could do that.
Sometimes having a grounding in a skill can open up your creativity, I think. I think because you have a set of skills that you can then use and you understand how to use them, I think it can be very freeing to the creative process. Some people would think in the opposite terms, they might find a skill constraining, but I think it can equally be liberating and open up options of creativity, because you think, how can you use it? And quite often you start to problem solve when you have a good skill set as well.
Yeah. And I think especially maybe when I was younger, I felt like, I would feel like, oh, I'm not good at drawing, for example. I'm not good, so therefore I can't draw. Whereas if I already had some carving skills, then I'm like, okay, well that's not the issue now. I can do this. So it's easier to just slowly progress and not just have a kind of a mental block, which is all it really is. Probably
Yeah.
wouldn't be bad at drawing. It's just that really big mental block of allowing yourself.
It's funny. I think we on the podcast we've talked about rules and parameters being really useful tools for creativity. And I think when stone craftspeople come to carving with a background of masonry, there's this confidence that they can hear the material and push the material around and kind of can invent with the material in a freedom that people who come to stone off the bat often don't have. But sometimes, I include myself in that, masons come with I always call it, the straight 90-degree mason's eye, and taking away cookie cutter shapes and possibly losing some of the options of nuance that you could subtly change if you didn't quite take so much away. But that's very much, I think masons often struggle with that flip between the absolute, this is a pattern, this must fit, to an interpretive, well, it must fit, but it can slightly deviate here, there, and everywhere in a micro way, I think, but enough to make it more lively. And I think when I met you, it was pretty obvious to me, actually, you'd already, although you had a masonry background, you already had a fluidity with the material and the making, and you could see how it could be. The visualization was already there. There was no kind of shift from one to the other. You naturally progressed into carving, which I thought was really impressive, actually, because A, of your age, but also because of your disciplined training. And that confidence came through very quickly, I thought. So
it's always really nice to get a compliment off Nina, isn't it?
Always
I'd
hard
take
one.
it.
My
Very hard
Britishness
one.
doesn't know how my Britishness doesn't know how to deal with it.
No, he's like, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've had to learn, when someone gives you a compliment, I've had to learn to say thank you.
Yeah, it's true.
Without going, oh no, well, all right then. Anyway, that's very hard, isn't it? But for me, I mean it very much, Miriam. It was a joy to watch you join the course and progress that way. So you went through the course, you did some fabulous stuff while you were there and discovered your own voice, I think, especially towards the end when you're allowed to explore things that you were interested in, I think, and some personal stuff. Talk us through how Miriam Johnson's sculptural voice developed through time and is moving through now.
I guess so. From the start, right at the beginning, like I say, I kind of went into it from a stonemasonry background, not thinking about the art side, but having come from quite an artistic childhood, I guess. And so starting out at City and Guilds, the first couple of years where you have very set things to do kind of thing, I think was a really great start, because it would have been too much to start with, coming up with my own ideas kind of thing. And like you said, I guess in a way it worked well for me. Like they just clicked. And then I guess the thing I was most interested also was just pushing the skills at one point. And so in my final year, one of the big things I did was a drapery piece, because that always feels like a very skilled thing to do, or it looks from the outside like, it's like the most impressive thing. That's how people always react a lot from that. And I think I knew right from the beginning that I'd quite like to do a drapery piece. And then the other piece I did there was the relief carving in slate, and that was connected to so my grandfather had once carved a small piece as a gift from my grandma, having not been trained. He was an architect, so he was an artist. He had the skills, but he always spoke about how he carved it with a sharpened screwdriver, and it was a carving of what kind of felt, as a child, I always thought was St. George and the Dragon, although I realised later that it was actually a centaur fighting a serpent. So because that was a kind of childhood, something that I'd always seen, child in stone, I decided to go with my version of that. And I carved it in slate. I can't remember why I carved it in slate, because it wasn't an obvious choice. I don't know
you
how
decided that, like, let's pick the hardest thing. It felt like, this is pretty tricky, but I can make it trickier.
Yeah,
and do it in a really unforgiving stone. Let's do.
And I guess that's what I wanted. I wanted to really refine the skills. Yeah, I wanted a challenge, and in two very different ways. So the relief carving in slate is completely different from the drapery piece. So I just wanted a challenge in two very different things. And then, and then it's been quite interesting since actually City and Guilds, the things that I've been doing in the last year. I feel like from my own kind of sculptural perspective, things have changed quite a lot in the last year. I think partly because up until now, mostly what I've been looking at a little bit is that still feeling of, oh, what's the next challenge, or what can I do to improve or show my skill, which is something that now I'm like, well, actually I know in a way I know I can do with these things now. Obviously, it's always more to learn with skills, but I feel very confident with a lot of things for technique, and I feel in a way I've shown that I can do that. So in a way, carrying on in that line is less interesting to me now, which is an interesting place to be at, because where do I go from there? Kind of thing. And then trying to get the balance of, it's not that, obviously I still want to use those skills and show those skills, but it's not just that, and just trying to get the right balance of, I think a lot of the time up until now, things that I did, I almost put all the different things involved in it to show the skill. So trying to, work out how much to pare it back, but still, and then also get the balance of what works for me and what works for other people and people's reaction. For example, drapery. So I've done quite a bit of drapery carving since, and it's something that works really well for me. Like I enjoy doing it, and I find it at this point fairly easy, I guess, but without being completely bored. That it's an interesting thing to do, but I don't struggle with it at all. And it's also something that people react to always in a very strong way. But in a way, I don't want to just be the drapery person, and I kind of feel like, well, I've done a lot of. I don't need to just if I'm doing something that maybe is a little bit more abstract, I guess, or just less. I don't know what the right word is, but more represent. Yeah. Anyway, that you then get a different reaction from people. So it's not, when you have something like drapery, the first reaction is, wow, that's amazing. How did you do that? It's incredibly skilled. It's kind of a full-on kind of reaction. That whereas if you've got something which is less about, even though it still requires maybe similar amount of skill, but something that is somehow connects people in a different way. They're not looking at the skill first. They're looking at the object, or the thing that you made, or the reason. So last year, like in the summer, I guess figurative pieces, but I don't have any of the words for it to describe things.
I mean, I was looking at the work online. Do you mean some of the pieces online? I was thinking how sophisticated they were in their simplicity, and I think I saw a sculpture in France in a cathedral. I think it was Rheims. It was a statue of a woman draped in a very simple chemise all the way to the floor, and I couldn't stop looking at it. And it was literally a pillar. It was a contemporary piece. It was made in the 70s, I think, 70s or 80s. It was on a plinth in the actual cathedral, and it had such presence to me. But I was definitely in the middle, making and modelling really sophisticated drapery things in the workshop. And I just couldn't work out why that piece spoke to me more than the sophisticated, complicated stuff I was doing in the workshop. And I was like, why am I attracted to this? And it's because it was utterly believable. incredibly sophisticated with nothing. And I think that person understood the physics of the object and the structure and the dynamics of the object that they were observing. In this case was a figure covered in cloth. But they had pared it down to the absolute minimum for me to understand visually through, because we're working in shade and form and tone, aren't we? That you could take it down to the bare skeletal essence of it and still say the same thing. And I think that's what I'm seeing in your recent work, is that you're getting rid of all the noise. It feels like all of the smoke and mirrors has been really pared back, and there's this terror, isn't there? I don't know about you, but I think that's what I'm getting from what you're saying, is like our skills are so hard won and they take so long to accrue. If I don't make something that screams to you, I'm actually quite good at this, how do I get that validation? And how can I hold myself and my reputation amongst peers and beyond? How can I stand and be proud of what I know and what I can do if I'm making something so simple that doesn't obviously display this all the time? And I'm incredibly guilty at that. Like the kitchen sink, the kitchen sink, everything, you know, but I could make this pierced, I could make this thinner, I could make this shinier, I could excuse me. It's really interesting, and it's terrifying taking all that away, because suddenly you're just you and your ideas rather than your amazing accrued skill and your ideas. And I mean, that's what I see in the recent work, is that you are
and I don't know, I mean, the recent, it just feels like I've got a lot more to do with that more recent work kind of thing, but it felt like a really big step in a new direction in a really unexpected way, in a way that I just didn't know. I gave myself, so last summer I gave myself for something like 3 or 4 months where I'd saved up a bit of money. I could just do my own work in those 3 or 4 months basically. So I wasn't, and I'd kind of put that aside to do that. But that was it. I didn't know what I was going to do, which is terrifying. And also, you can't always just make yourself do something. So I think there was 4 months, and I think for the first 2 months, I don't know if I did anything really. I mean, I did, but there wasn't much physically to show, which again was scary. But I needed those 2 months of nothing to then have 2 months that then felt really productive. Which also most of the time people can't have 4 months where you're not.
Yeah, but you work really hard. You work away from home. You are deliberately, not deliberate. You are working in a way that allows you that, and you know that's your choice. That's not luck. You're engineering that so that you can work that way. And I think, I mean, fantastic commitment to it, really.
With the figures in the arches, Miriam, I mean, I thought that was really beautiful and very moving piece. I wondered, had you seen the little arches they have in some of the old Roman settlements where they put ashes? Have you seen those?
So I think the first thing with the arches, the first time I was looking at arches or interested in that kind of thing, was actually in a temple in Bhutan, so a Buddhist temple, where inside a huge room, and the room completely covered with arches with cross-legged figures in. I mean, amazing painted figures and with real clothes on some of them. But what I find interesting about those arches, and what I like about it, is that there is something that feels slightly religious about it, or in a way, I think, but it doesn't feel like a very specific religion. I feel like I find it really interesting with those arches. Whenever I show anyone those, people often have a fairly strong connection to it in very different ways, even because there's lots of different figures and every person points out a different figure that they like, which I really like. I feel like it's like some kind of psychological evaluation of them. What does it mean that they like this one?
Oh my God, like a test. You're on the scale. This is where you are emotionally on the scale if you pick this figure.
Yeah. But I think with that work, part of what I'm looking at is so it's these figures in niches, and I find it really interesting, this idea of statues and making a sculpture of a specific person, and whether that's in a religious setting where they might be, I guess they're being to an extent idolized, or there's something whenever you carve a specific person, um, and then which I'm always not sure about exactly if it's not in a religious setting, for example, if you have a sculpture of a historical figure, it changes the meaning. As soon as you carve, especially in stone, a person, they become something else. They become not human. They become an idealized figure in stone, uh, and and then they kind of lose their humanness, I guess, in a way. And with that piece, what I was looking at was because they don't have face, they're simpler, really simplified people. They don't have faces. They're not a specific person, but I tried to give them quite a character. So I was trying to remove it being a specific person that's being maybe idolized or looked at, but then put in kind of human interaction and character into them. So it's a slightly strange balance of trying to make them less themselves but more themselves. I don't. It's a hard.
Have you seen? You're familiar with the mourners of Burgundy, or the Burgundy tomb? Yeah,
Yes,
and
yeah,
they represent. I think I don't know. There's only 18, I think, left now, but they represent mourners at a funeral that are paid to mourn. So there were mourners for hire. I think it goes across many cultures. You can hire people to come to a funeral and wail and shout. And these are all male monks draped in heavy cloaks. And many of them have no features, no facial features. The cloaks are so heavy over their faces. But they stand in a particular way and they gesture in a particular way that gives you an impression of how they're mourning or how they're expressing their angst. And I think there is an innate shape. We know if someone, it's like sensing somebody's presence halfway down a road when you just see a silhouette. We know, don't we, when we see a silhouette, if that person is friendly, is not friendly, is upset, is having fun. There is something about the gesture and the movement. In a silhouette that doesn't move, you can instantly tell, I think, how you respond to it. I think it is extraordinarily human, that recognition.
Yeah. And I think maybe one of the reasons that I'm looking a little bit more of that is that I spend quite a lot of time here, Saudi Arabia, and a lot of my students that I work with are niqabi women. So they're women that have their face covered and are wearing a bias. So you don't see so much. You don't see their faces, but they're people that I know incredibly well, and I can recognize them from really far and really close, and know them. I don't lose much, much from that. So I guess I've been spending the last few years around where actually the gesture and the person is very much there, without those details that I think sometimes we think we need to know a specific person.
So talk us through what you're doing, Miriam. So a while ago now, is it 4 years ago that you started?
Yeah, 5 years. It was like a couple of weeks before the first COVID lockdown.
Oh my God!
First came here.
And how did that happen?
So because of my link with the King's Foundation from before, from when I first trained, I had a link with the King's Foundation, and I'd done a few little bits of teaching with them, kind of a day here or there, through my link with them in London. And so the King's Foundation School of Traditional Arts, mostly based in London. They have a school there where they run MAs and PhDs in traditional arts. They also have outreach schools programs around the world. And about 5-6 years ago, they opened up this new one in AlUla, where teach sort of a variety of different crafts to local people from the town. And AlUla is a town that's being kind of regenerated into a arts heritage centre. They have ancient monuments similar to Petra there, so built by the same people, the Nabateans. Petra was the kind of capital city. AlUla was the second biggest city. So these massive tombs carved into the rocks. So it makes sense that they, whilst they're regenerating, AlUla looking at doing arts training, that they have stone there. And here, so stone carving specifically, there's not much of a living tradition in this region. So obviously there's a lot of really old carving, but there's a kind of a gap really of being kind of generations teaching each other, and so yeah, so that there's not really much stone carving training at all happening in this region, and so from about 5 years ago, I come maybe 3-4 weeks a year, 3 or 4 weeks about two times a year, teaching students that are doing, they do a year-long program in lots of different crafts. And once they've done that year-long program, they might then carry on afterwards and specialize a little bit. So the ones that are specializing be in a different strand. So there'll be the ones that I teach will be doing stone carving, wood carving, pigment making, and kind of box making. And that's what I've been doing mostly for the last 5 years. But then this year there's a different that I've been managing, which is very stone carving specific. So my students at the moment are 4 months into a 5-month specifically stone carving course, which is something that I kind of, yeah, it was an interesting program because kind of from scratch putting together what we'll teach in those skills. Yeah.
And what's the predominant stone that you carve out there?
So the region that I go to is mostly sandstone in the environment, and it's very present. So there's these kind of big rocky mountains and formations all around. So it's a really big part of kind of life there. But actually, a lot of the time we're carving some limestone still from Saudi Arabia, but from Riyadh, so from a different area, just for because especially when we're doing the kind of a few weeks here and there, this limestone makes more sense to start off health and safety wise. Yeah, but with this 5-month program, we're trying to do some with the local stone, but it's really hard to source because it's not like there's a quarry, so not as easy to get. But I did also do a few years ago part of a residency in AlUla as well, where myself and another artist, Adam Williamson, had a few months to work on a piece of public art, and for that we got a boulder, which was pretty amazing thing to do because basically I drove around looking at random boulders in the desert until I said, "Oh yeah, I'll have that one."
And so for people who haven't seen this, I've seen pictures of this on the internet. And when you're talking about a boulder, it's like, how big is, I mean, it's not like a listing. This is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, I think we calculated about 65 tons in weight. Yeah, huge.
And it's beautiful what you did, but the pictures of you working it on top of the stone in what we presume is great heat with all your PPE and looks like you were enjoying the physical side of your work.
Yeah, it was pretty intense. I mean, we were there in winter, and actually in the winter there it's not too hot. But I mean, you're in intense sun, but it's not too hot.
Yeah.
But it's a very, very harsh sandstone. Eats through the tools, and it also is very highly pigmented. So it was basically dyeing my skin. I really couldn't. And because I was using angle grinder things, even with all the clothes, the the pigment, the color would still kind of almost get through.
Wow.
And I was staying in like hotels or things with white sheets, and like as much as I was trying to wash off at the end, there was always this orange kind of haze. I guess it's what fake tan
I was
is.
going to say fake tan must do the same. They must be used to that completely. Oh, like they probably looked at you and thought, fake tan, interesting.
I was thinking it was quite lucky that it was the same color as my hair.
Oh my God, yeah. Imagine if you'd been like silver blonde, you'd have come home with ginger hair, like everyone should. So how long was that? How long was the residency? 2 months?
We did it in a few different parts. So the total, I think it will be both Adam. So I think I spent maybe 2 or 3 months, and Adam spent maybe 6 weeks or something like that. But we did it in sections, so it was a bit hard, and we overlapped for some of it and not other parts, so it's hard.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and it was, so we had a theme of Oasis, where the boulder is next to a kind of ancient well. So we were looking at getting these kind of arts that look like ways. And Adam specializes a lot in geometry, all kinds, bringing up from all kinds of different places with it. So he put together kind of an underlying pattern for the pathway to follow. And then we made it into these kind of calligraphic, slightly channels.
So talk to me about, so your students, who are they? What typically, they're women or men and women? Or?
So it is mixed. Mostly the main program that we've been teaching is much higher proportion of women. So often there's only, maybe in a class of 12, 13, there might just be one, if that. But the course that I'm doing now, because it's more stone carving specific, I've got 10 students, and it's three men. So still more women, but it is.
Why is that?
And
why is that?
So it's a good question, because it'd be nice to be more mixed in a way.
Yeah.
But I think maybe for the main program where there's a bigger mix of different crafts, some of those crafts maybe are more traditionally things that women would do more, because it's including things like weaving and embroidery, felting, which are just seen as more traditionally women. And then I don't know if it's also that the women, that maybe some of the like kind of arts and crafts isn't maybe seen as something that you can work in that will give you enough income. Maybe it might be something to do with that.
It's the world over, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's not just there.
Exactly.
It's a global phenomenon.
So yeah. But it is quite interesting because I came from a background of doing more stonemasonry work. So I was very much used to being in a very male environment to now in a much more female environment. It's quite quite a surprise to suddenly be in quite a different space.
So how do they react to you as somebody who's come into their world to teach them traditional skills that they presumably will be encouraged to be able to use in their own communities afterwards? How do they react to that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Before coming, I was a bit unsure about that. This idea of coming in and teaching traditional craft in a place where you're from somewhere else. Because a couple of years ago, I also went to Bhutan, and there as well. And there I felt it more strongly because there is a living tradition of some carving there. So I'm coming in teaching a European way of carving and knowing that and working out how to do that and whether it's okay to do that was something that I really had to think about. But one of the main things is always make sure that I make it very clear that I'm teaching my tradition of carving and that I'm teaching a European tradition of carving. But that's all that I can teach. And there's that thing that when I'm teaching, you have to I'll be to an extent fairly strict about actually at the beginning about how to do things, and I'll be very clear that as I'm teaching, whilst I'm teaching, follow the way I'm doing it. But then when I go away, you don't have to. There isn't one way of doing things. The only way of, yeah, if I need, I can only teach my way. I can't teach any other way. So I always just try and make it very, very clear that that's what I'm doing. And then, because one of the big things I find when teaching is that in a lot of places, carving is done set on the ground, and that's not how I carve. I carve standing up, but that's just a very European way of doing it. But I wouldn't be able to teach carving sitting down in a way that would work for physically for our bodies. But yeah, it just makes it. I have to just be very clear that yeah, teaching the European way. I think I feel okay about that as long as I have that. If I was coming in and saying this is the way to do it, this is the only way to do it, all the other ways are wrong, then that wouldn't be okay. But
I'm the more civilized. I'm showing you a civilized way of that dreadful word that you see in art history books, don't you?
Yeah. And then also, if, for example, here in Saudi, there's not, because there isn't so much of a living tradition. There are Saudis that do, but they'll have either been taught probably, and I might be wrong here. There might be people who have been taught outside of Saudi or have been more self-taught. It means that I feel more comfortable coming in because it's not that I'm just stepping over.
Are there other similar setups from different countries doing similar things? Do you hear, or do you think yours is a one-off experience there?
So the King's Foundation have outreach schools in a few different countries around the world. Here in AlUla, it's the only place that stone carving, with the King's Foundation, that is. What do you mean? What kind of setup?
So in AlUla, is there any other type of learning that a different country, so like the UK is hosting, I don't quite know how it works, but the King's Foundation has a presence. Do any other countries have a similar type of presence to show and teach different ways of doing things as well?
As in other countries coming into AlUla?
Yes.
Well, so with the King's Foundation, they teaching lots of different crafts, and a lot of their teachers are from quite a few places around the world. So a lot of the teachers have done the MA in London, but a lot of my colleagues are from over place.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Philippines, India. Yeah.
So what the students are getting from the King's Foundation is a much more world view of making. It's not necessarily just a Western view of making.
Yes, yeah. So I guess the stone carving is Western, but the rest,
But I think that's quite important in the bigger picture, actually. It's not just a Western intervention.
No,
it's a much broader scope than that. It's interesting, isn't it?
And the King's Foundation School of Traditional Arts is everything that they do is based around sacred geometry, and a lot of their work is Islamic art. So that's the school in London as well. So it's almost like the school in London has been looking at things from other places, and then it's going back.
I'm just going to move us on a little bit, unless you've got anything else you want to ask Nina as well.
Only that. So you're on your way now to do 3 weeks. You're there for 3 more weeks.
4 weeks
to do a month. And then what does the rest of the year hold for you? You're going to come home. You also work in the restoration industry. I know I met you recently, and you've done some repairs on statuary, etc. So is that how you balance your year? You go out for a bit, and then maybe, I hope, have some time off when you come home, and then you're back in the industry and working on building sites or restoration sites, and then you go back. So you have a balance throughout the year, do you, of different things?
Yeah. So sometimes the balance is every year it's a slightly different. So this year I've ended up going out much more. So the last couple of years I've spent much more time away. But the idea is that then, yeah, I'm back. I have my studio space, take commissions, have some time to do my work, some time to do the commissions, including work on site. I mean, it's the classic freelance. I never really know.
Every day is different.
I hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because I do have slightly more, have a base, I know that I have the teaching. It makes the other things a little bit more possible. Yeah. And then I have previously done a lot more work on restoration, and I really enjoy doing that side of it. So actually, when I finished at City and Guilds, I spent 2 years working on the restoration of Elizabeth Tower, so Big Ben restoration, and that was an amazing experience. It felt like it was the last bit of training. In the way that I spoke about earlier, not being sure whether I should have stayed doing a bit of stonemasonry before, but this felt like it made up, because it was a really great team that I worked with, including a few people that had worked on cathedrals, had trained and worked on cathedrals, and it was, in a way, the setup there was similar to that. So I then learnt a lot from them, that last bit, which was pretty amazing.
So like a finishing school.
Like
a 2 years finishing school.
Yeah. And I really enjoy, and I haven't really done so much of that. So I've done a few little bits of repairs to very specific sculpture on buildings since, but in a way, I'd quite like to also go back and do a bit more building side as well, because having the balance, I think, is really, really important. Especially, I feel like when I get the balance wrong of almost doing too much the teaching side, it doesn't feel right. I really enjoy teaching, but the making, I don't want to lose the making side. And I think the teaching side also I find so much more exhausting.
Yes, finally.
And like I say, I really enjoy it, and my students are great. But when you're teaching, you have to be your best self all the time. You have to deal with the students' psychology, but hide your own.
Some of us manage it. Charlotte is less able to do that, but you come to understand that when you work with her. It's exhausting, isn't it? You have to, like you say, you have to be the best version of you all of the time if you can, but the hope is most of the time.
Yeah. And it's really rewarding, but yeah.
I was going to say, I'm continually learning things about myself working with you
with this podcast. So
I was going to say, what's next for you, Miriam? Where do you sort of hope to be within a few years? Where's your...
Yeah, it's a good question.
Maybe you just don't know.
I mean, it's been pretty amazing. I mean, I feel, I guess it's been about 10 years that I've been in the stone world, and I've done a lot, and I feel, it feels pretty amazing. The last summer, doing a bit of my own work in this new way felt like quite a step in a certain direction, which was quite interesting.
I think it's quite exciting looking in on your career. I'm sure you're going to do whatever you do. I think you'll do really well looking at what you've done, looking at the work you've created and the experience you've gained. I think you've put yourself in a brilliant place to move forward. And, I certainly look forward to see what's coming.
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I don't know. I've got no idea.
I think that's quite exciting.
Yeah. I've also been doing. I've been quite interested in not so much in stone, but doing portraiture work in clay and then casting it, which is a kind of a different. And it's strange, maybe, so that I'm doing it at the same time as doing these figures without face. These two sides, and that's something that will be interesting to see where that goes. It's just something that I'm exploring.
So
But yeah, I don't know.
if the world wants to find you, Miriam, what's your website? How do they
So
find
my
you?
website is www.miriamjohnson.co.uk.
Yeah, I'll
And
put that link in the
Yeah, we'll
show
put the link. We'll
notes,
put the link in.
and your
and
Instagram
then
handle I'll put in.
it's miriam.johnson.stone. And I'm always telling myself that I'll be better at updating my Instagram. I always feel like it takes me a year. I do something and then I need many months before I can post it.
You live with it for a while.
Lots like processing.
Living with it before you make it public, before it gives birth and
Yeah,
becomes its
yeah,
own
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
Yeah,
A
exactly.
few months, I think sometimes I'm a few years.
Yeah, yeah. And I always feel like I can't evaluate. I don't know if it's good or not.
Yeah, you can't see it.
I
I
can't.
don't
I
see
can't
it.
see it
It becomes
before.
furniture almost. If you look at something too much, it
Yeah,
becomes furniture, and then you can't really. I always think it's a bit like saying a word over and over and over and over again, and there gets a point in your brain where your brain doesn't recognize the word. It's
Yes.
just the sound.
yeah,
And it feels like that when you
yeah,
look at something for months and sometimes years. It just becomes hazy, doesn't it? You just see it as a shape. You
yeah,
don't see it as
yeah,
individual elements. I think it's quite good
yeah,
to have a break from it, actually cover it up, look at it
yeah,
again.
yeah, very much so. I just remembered that I spent 3 months in Italy, like, learning marble carving, which I haven't spoken about.
Just remembered.
Which
Oh, there was my time in
um,
Italy.
Italy, yeah, which I feel like is also part, quite almost part of that kind of continuing of the training after, because I think you've spoken in this podcast before about kind of the difference in marble carving, and I guess in the UK we don't have marble, so we don't have so much of a tradition of learning it. So going there and learning that specific thing
Mm.
was, I think, really important and really great experience, and pretty great to be in an environment around so many where carving everyone's a kind of. So I was in or near Pietrasanta, so everything was just so many carvers and shops. Just it's
It's
pretty
like here,
pretty great.
everybody's in IT, and over there, everybody's a stone carver. Like
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah,
there's more stone carvers than estate agents, and I think you can judge a
yeah.
country's culture if the balance changes that way. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool, I think.
yeah.
So if you were going to give, I'm going to put you on the spot. So for somebody with so much experience, so early on in their life, so to speak, a piece of advice, two pieces of advice. One piece of advice
Mhm.
you were given, and it's been quite useful, is memorable. And the second piece of advice you weren't given that you wish you had been, or you would like to impart to the listeners. It's really unfair of me, but I don't care.
I think I feel like I've had lots of really great advice given to me, and I can't think
So
specific.
if
I
yeah,
think
go on.
I think well, advice that I would give is not specializing too much and not because boxing. Yeah, and this early on, basically, like what I feel like, and when I look at um other people in a similar who trained around a similar time as me and things like that, I think one of the reasons that I have been able to get so many opportunities is because I've had quite a range from the beginning. I had quite a range, which then has made everything a lot more possible because I can then do a little bit of this, that, a bit of everything, which actually, if I was just doing one thing, um, I might not be able to make it work. It might not be viable. I mean, I think it's something that you've spoken about quite a lot before. But
Diversification.
that
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think that's obviously getting the balance right, diversification, but also getting good at the thing,
Yeah.
getting that balance. Advice someone's given me. I don't know. It's probably something you've said to
Oh,
me.
that's fair. I'm going to say thank you to that lovely compliment. I'm going to take that compliment. I mean, just something. It was really unfair, and I think you've answered the question really well about the diversity.
One thing, I guess, also, I guess it's not advice, but that thing of how someone reacts when something goes wrong is always quite interesting. Um, and I guess maybe that's one of the, yeah, that advice of, I don't know exactly what the phrase would be, exactly,
I think can
Is
I
that
can I
is that
say
standard?
yeah, and I'm
Go on.
gonna put my 2 pence in and say when things have gone unexpectedly for you, I'm not going to say the word wrong. When I've seen you do work and something unexpected has happened, I've always seen you use it as a learning opportunity.
Yeah,
I think you've
yeah,
always
yeah,
reflected on how you got there. There's decisions to do, whether that's practical or design wise, whatever. And I've always seen you go back, dissect, learn, and move on.
yeah, yeah,
That
yeah.
I've definitely seen
And
you.
I think I remember you. I think probably why I brought it up is that I remember you noting that or talking about that in a way that then, yeah, has made me think of that. That's quite a big thing to that thing of being okay when things go differently than what you want,
Yeah.
and that you can
It's a gift.
almost
It's
always
a
make it
gift.
work.
I always tell
Yeah,
people,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
something going wrong is a gift. You're just looking at it in the wrong
yeah,
way. This object could be
yeah,
better. And this is the
yeah,
opportunity to make it
yeah,
better,
yeah,
I think. I
yeah,
mean, if the head falls off, then we have to have a conversation.
yeah, yeah.
But if
But yeah,
if there's a shake or if there's some inclusion or something, or you've taken too much away, there's always an
yeah,
opportunity to make something more lively, I think.
yeah. And then watching, I guess also having done quite a bit of teaching now, watching that and um, making that clear to people because usually that's what people are the most scared of.
Yeah. And it's the question,
But
isn't
and
it?
then also
What
yeah,
do you do?
yeah, yeah. And then also as a teacher watching people deal with making a mistake in very, very different ways.
Well, Miriam Johnson, I want to thank you at this point for taking time in your hotel in Jeddah. Is it Jeddah? I got that right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And thank you so much for talking to us. We've been desperate to get you on for a while. So as you
And fascinating. Thank you.
just
Yes, been
wonderful.
Thank
brilliant.
you.
And yeah, thank you so much. And all the luck in the world for the next month and for the future. And both Charlotte and I are so excited to see where you go from here. It's an
We
absolute
are.
privilege, Miriam. Absolute privilege
Yeah,
to know you.
thank you. And safe travels.
Thank you. And and I really enjoy listening to the podcast.
Oh,
So.
that's very sweet.
Thank you.
Wow, what an interview. It's just left me really buoyant for the rest of the day, talking to Miriam. I love
Yeah, me
talking to
too.
Miriam.
What a great, sensitive and thoughtful soul. You could hear how she really thought hard about, the difficulties of a Western person going over and teaching stone carving in a tradition that, had great stone carving. I thought she answered those difficult questions really sensitively and heartfelt, with great understanding of the position she was in, without any sense of authoritative knowledge, or really good example of this is what it can teach you if you want to learn and it's of use to you.
Teaching you skills and allowing people to and making people understand that you just adapt this into your own your own skill, your own cultural heritage is then adapted and can be then redone in the skills that I'm teaching you. And the fact that she questioned herself, she was open about the fact she questioned that herself before she accepted the job, before she went there, and also had organized in her head how she was going to be very upfront about that when she started teaching.
Yeah, I was very impressed.
She's just, I think from the moment I met her, her warmth and her intelligence and maturity for someone of that age just is so clear. You feel drawn to her, like you want to find out who she is and what she does, etc. She's a fascinating woman. And it's been a real privilege to teach her, and a brilliant privilege and such a lovely thing for her to do, to stop on the way to Saudi Arabia to talk to us from Jeddah. Yeah, and the sun is shining. I know I'm going to jinx it, and by the time this comes out, we'll have had 3 weeks of constant rain. But how glorious this weather has been. So I hope everybody's had a chance to enjoy it.
Yeah, and if you're carving outside, this actually, I do have a top tip. Here it is.
Oh no, the top tips. Okay.
If you're carving outside with a mask on, put sunscreen on so you don't look like Homer Simpson at the end of the day.
So you don't look like a reverse badger.
Yeah, you must wear your sunscreen if you're carving outside.
Otherwise
you look like Homer Simpson. You need a hat, a mask, and sunscreen.
Yeah, come on, guys. Health and safety first. Okay, have a fabulous month. We'll speak to you next month with another interesting and fascinating guest. Yeah. So happy chipping, everybody.
Happy chipping.
If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate your support. Please like and subscribe, and that will really help us get the podcast to a wider audience. So follow the link, like and subscribe, and give us your support.
And if you're feeling really enthusiastic, then give us a good review.
Oh,
That's
give
what
us
we
a
like.
review. Bugger.